Boy, with all the turmoil in the world, you ever wondered, does God hear our cries? Let me ask you a question. Do you ever feel as though you pray, but God is not hearing your cries, your prayers? Today I'm going to go through, show you 5 basic points through Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 5 to 9, that God actually hears your cries, hears our cries. But in his infinite wisdom and divine plan, he answers our prayers in his time. You can be confident, folks, that the iniquities that you and I as believers currently face eventually will be addressed and judged in his time, not ours. Welcome back to Reason for Truth, everybody. I'm your host, Stevie Garofalo. You know, Reason for Truth. The truth always comes first. The reasons we follow up with the last, but we're always and constantly learning, because when we stop learning, we stop teaching, or at least stop teaching well, and we're not going to have that here. We're going to make sure we teach well so you learn well. Listen, I want to assure you that God hears your cries, and he knows your pain and your struggles. You can be confident in his timing. And listen, God knows everything. He's going to show you his will in light of your own ambitions, your desires, and your will. Sometimes those things are in different timelines. Sometimes they're in conflict. The truth is that as imperfect creatures, you and I often misinterpret God's pause in responding to our cries, our prayers, as unanswered prayer. Nothing could be further from the truth. God tells us through Psalm 40, verse 1, says this, "I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined to me and heard my cry." What does it mean? God inclined towards us. What does that mean? He's inclined towards us. Well, meaning that he's wanting or likely to act, but in his time and according to his defined plan, not when we ask him. He's not a machine like a vending machine. Let's be careful to accept the fact that we are to wait upon God and not God who is to wait upon us. Let's shift gears, and now I want to look at Ecclesiastes chapter 8. Kind of better learn how you and I can better wait upon God's answered prayer, or how he answers our prayers. God tells us in Ecclesiastes chapter 8, 5 to 9, he says this, "Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything. Although man's trouble lies heavy on him, for he does not know what is to be. For who can tell him how it will be? No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. All this I observe while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over man to his hurt." Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verses 5 to 9. It's in the ESV. God's words through King Solomon can be broken down into 5 basic points, this particular passage. I'm going to break them down. First, a wise person's confidence is that iniquities eventually will terminate, right? I mean, we kind of say this is terrible. Well, remember, what is painful today often goes away tomorrow, even if it seems like it's never going to. My mother used to say to me as a young man, as a young boy, "This too, my son, will pass." And she was right 100% of the time. Obviously, I'm here. But, the iniquities will eventually terminate, and proper judicial systems or decisions and proper judicial decisions made on behalf of God for our vindication and in reverse as well, verse 5, will take place. In other words, with all the injustices we see in the news, in our schools, in our communities, businesses, in our world today, we should be confident that those iniquities will eventually terminate with God's justice. We got to be careful, because we as well create injustices and inequalities on others. I'm not talking politically, but we sometimes sin, and what we do, we have to make sure we make good with that, ask God's forgiveness, and the person perhaps we've wronged. And that's how we move on in sanctification. But remember that nobody gets away with doing evil in the long run. It may be after one's death, perhaps, but eventually those who propagate these gross injustices will be called to justice. That's number one. Second, you and I as believers, we're to wait patiently for God's timing and his reckoning of all things, despite the fact that we cannot know when that time will come. Verse 7, despite the fact that we are weighted down with the trouble, and in the meanwhile, we need to be patient in this fallen, sinful world. In other words, be patient just for a little while. All right, that's number 2. Third, in the interim, while we wait, we are to be found doing God's work, serving and worshiping God, as opposed to basking in recreation and comfort of our privileged life. Let's not be caught living life blindly to God's plan, as to that was the case right in Noah's time. Noah did the right thing, but the whole world was what they were marrying, starting businesses, and going upon life. And what happened? The flood came upon them. Noah and his family and friends there, they were found working, doing God's will. And for a very long time, talk about waiting and being patient of today's sermon. We could just look at Noah's life over 130 years plus. He was building that ark. People were laughing at him. They didn't laugh at him when the rains came and didn't stop, right? When the great flood came. That's number 3. Fourth, just as one cannot control the time of their death, he or she cannot escape the consequences of their wickedness, despite how small or how powerful they are in the present world. Look at these politicians sometimes as business people. Look at them. You can see the names all over, big yachts and all. I'm not putting any of that down. It's great if you earned it rightfully. If you earned it unrightfully and, illegally or certainly immorally or unethically, well, then you're going to have to answer to that. I mean, turn on the television. Just look at all these people that are so powerful, and they actually have nothing better to do but to take from those who have less, typically the middle class, and they give it to the poor, right? Robin Hood. But, how wealthy and how powerful a person is here on earth will not escape the consequences of their wickedness, just as the way it is. You can be assured of that. Just be patient. It's number 4. Fifth and lastly, Solomon makes clear that God sees and knows all the hurts in our life. Verse 9, and he knows we stand at the hand of the wicked rulers and the injustice and that's being done, injury to the citizens of your country and mine, if you're watching this or listening to this outside of the country, especially if you're ruled by tyrants, even in a so-called democracy, right? God sees it all, he knows it all, and when he has had enough, and it's in his perfect timing, I can assure you, things are going to change. They're going to change really quickly, and you're going to be happy but horrified at the same time. Because when God deals with the rulers, he usually deals with the nation in whole. But God will provide, protect, and give peace and provision to those who are his. Simply put, listen, you can be confident that the iniquities that you and I as believers currently face eventually will be addressed by God in his time. As a wise man once told me, life is short, but eternity is forever. Listen, in closing, go back, study these 5 basic points found in Ecclesiastes, and read Ecclesiastes 8, chapter 8, verses 5 to 9. Remember, God hears your cries, but in his infinite wisdom and in his divine plan, he answers your prayers in his time. And in the end, you can be confident that the iniquities you and I as believers are currently facing in this world, this fallen world, will eventually be addressed by God himself in his time. That's all I got to say. You can be confident. Take that one to the bank, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, why'd you do a couple things? What are you waiting for? Subscribe, bam, hit that alert bell. You can miss any of these episodes. If we're getting throttled down, which we are here at YouTube for sure, you can check us out at Rumble, but I tell you, go to podcasts. That's where the action's at. You can check out all the podcast links and the videos, all your options at at reasonfortruth.org. Then go back to StephenGarofalo.com. Join my community, and if you want, in the subscriber level, you'll get this on audio 1 or 2, maybe 3 days early every week, and I think it's $5 a month. Woo, not a lot of money for getting that kind of access. And you download it directly from the app. So if you're in a closed country, you can gain access that way. Boom. There you go. StephenGarofalo.com. God's blessings to you. I'm your host, Stephen Garofalo, and this is your Reason for Truth for today.